I am so excited today. I don't only have a YPO colleague, but I have a new friend, which is so exciting when you're doing a podcast and you can bring some really smart, incredibly vulnerable people. I have the honor of having Kerry Siggins on our podcast today. A quick note on her is she's the executive chair, excuse me, of StoneAge, which is a global industrial technology company and 100% employee owned, which we're going to talk about today, based in Colorado. Under her leadership, StoneAge has grown into a global company serving customers across more than 50 countries, Carrie.
Oh,
That's
yeah. I don't even know more. Yeah,
maybe
probably. I think
more.
we've got dealers in 50 some countries, but yeah, our products are everywhere.
That's amazing because you're dealing cross-culturally, you're dealing
Hmm.
cross-language, you're dealing that adds some. We could actually talk about that. That might be fun.
Yeah.
So, Carrie, today, welcome to our podcast called the Unmasked CEO Files.
I'm so excited to be here. It's so lovely to see you again.
So great. And my blue matches your blue, which is,
I love that. I know.
serendipity.
I know.
Serendipity.
And look, my tan matches your tan in the back. So it was like we just like nailed it.
I love it. I love it. We didn't even talk about it. That's perfect. So in typical YPO fashion, I'm going to start with an icebreaker. And that icebreaker is if you were really to know me, you would need to know this.
Mm. So I am on this journey of self-actualization. And I have recently embarked on a hypnotherapy program to
Mm,
help me release the subconscious programming of I am not enough. And my I am not enough manifests itself in overperforming and constantly feeling the need to prove myself. It's not a self-confidence issue, like, oh, I'm not
hmm
enough, I'm not good enough that way. It's I just constantly have to prove and to push and to perform. And I have removed that voice. And it has been freeing, a little bit scary. I had some grief because when all of a sudden you don't have a voice that has been with you for, I don't know, 40 some years, like almost my entire life, it was a little disorienting. And so to really know me now is to be able to see the real me behind this, the person who's really truly behind the performance, the proving, which is somebody who is truly passionate about finding alignment for activating people with my voice and my words and living just this expansive life that isn't about, I don't know what I guess American society would say is success. And
hmm
so it's been this big transformation that I've gone through. So I share this because I think, especially as you read my book and you see my content coming out, it's going to have this whole different feel because of this self-actualization journey and this idea of I'm just here to share and to help people remember who they are instead of I'm doing this because I somehow have to perform or prove myself.
That's wonderful. So it sounds like, although the words say self-actualization, it's I needed to get to know the real me.
Yeah.
Is that a
Yeah.
fair way to think about
Yeah.
that?
I would say that. I would absolutely say that. How about you? I'm going to turn the question back on to you. So, to really know you, what would you want to share with us?
Well, I didn't expect that question. Now I'm a little stressed now thinking about it. I think for me, I think people who know me know this, but I lead with love on everything. I think that's, how I approach the world. I want all interactions with me to be positive, and even if in tough situations to be positive, because, when I look at the world, I think that, it sounds a little hokey, but what else do we have but love? Like that
Yes.
really matters. That really matters when you get all the trappings of success that you talked about and relationships and strategies and tactics and comes back to human beings. That's all we're here
Mhm.
for. And so that's what I would want someone to know about me and hopefully feel from me when I'm interacting with them. So that would be my
That's
question. But this
beautiful.
is
That's
my
beautiful.
podcast, not yours. So let's stop that.
Well, I was curious. I wanted to hear your answer, and I love that answer.
Thank
Love
you.
is what's going to save us, and if we can get
Well,
back to that, then I think that humanity will evolve into what we can be. But we have to remember that really, love is all there is.
it is. That's what excuse me, John said. John Lennon said it so many years ago.
Yes.
Uh, But there was something, when something I read before I'm going to dive into your story, there's something that just stopped me in my tracks that really talked about who you were when you shared a post recently about sitting across from an executive who told you that you were the problem,
Yeah.
that everything that you thought you were, he had challenged you on. And most CEOs that I know, maybe including myself, would just kind of go, it's him, it's not me. But you
Mhm.
said, no, I'm not going to do that. Can you take me into that moment? Like what happened in that room? And then what was your reflection afterwards?
It was one of the hardest, but also one of the most freeing and growth experiences I've ever had. So it was what my equivalent of a CEO. He ran my operations and engineering, VP of operations and engineering, and he was my right hand man. And I had been traveling, really growing the business out in the market, and he was staying back here at our headquarters in Durango,
Mhm.
Colorado, running the day-to-day business. And I didn't realize how much resentment had built up over that.
Wow.
And so I missed the cues. And so we were talking about his role in the company and growing the company. And I could tell that things weren't landing, but I didn't know what the issue was. And he basically blew up at me and he said, you think that you're this inspiring CEO, you think you're this disruptive CEO, but really what you are is erratic. You drive and you drive and you drive, and half the people in this company don't know where you're going, and you are incredibly
Wow.
hard to work for. You're the problem. And it was shocking because here, this person who I relied on, who I considered my most trusted person, had these really strong feelings about me that had not been shared. And I am a huge believer in feedback. And I think there's always a way to own something in the feedback. But the natural instinct is to protect and defend, and then you miss that gift. And so in that moment, I had to focus on my training, the things I have trained myself to do, and that is take a deep breath and say, thank you for that feedback. I need to process it,
Wow.
and we will circle back tomorrow. Because I think, like, what your point is I wanted to say, like, get the hell out of my office and don't come back, because everything in me was saying, you are questioning, you are making me question everything that I believe about myself. It
Yeah.
wasn't just the words, it was an attack on my identity.
Yes.
And I didn't understand that nearly as clearly as I do now, but it was really tough. And I questioned everything. I went home and I cried, and I thought, am I cut out to be a CEO if my number one guy thinks this of me? What if it's true? And I had to get my nervous system regulated and
Yeah.
calm down. And then, that voice in my head says, okay, what can you take from this feedback? And I chose to focus on the word erratic because that is not how I wanted to be perceived. And I could see the truth in it. And so I was hard driving. I like new ideas. I changed direction. I don't have a problem saying, I'm wrong. That's not a good idea. Let's go this way. And I could see how that could be very disorienting for people who were not moving at my pace and who didn't see what I saw.
Hmm.
So it changed my leadership style forever. And it was one of the most powerful pieces of feedback I ever received.
So fast forward for me, after you took the feedback, did the relationship change with him, or did he stick around, or did you give me the end of the story?
Yeah. He ultimately left. It was mutually agreed upon. I don't think there was any recovering from that. Not
Mm,
because I couldn't forgive him and move on. I think it was going to be difficult for him, but it was just so clear that there wasn't space for both of us in the company. He
mm,
wanted to be the CEO. He thought he could run the company better than me.
yeah.
And maybe in some ways he could, but in some ways he couldn't, and it didn't matter. This was my job. I'm the
Right.
CEO. I'm not going anywhere. And so there was just not space, and so we left on good terms.
Good.
We did a couple of months transition while I reorganized the company. This was probably the most challenging point in my leadership career and my tenure as a CEO, because 2 months after he said this to me, we got hacked, and then we were literally getting ready to bring our systems up after 4 weeks of being down, of this heroic effort that my team went through to ship products to our customers manually. Then COVID hit. And
Mhm.
so it was this incredible leadership change within the company, a hack, a ransomware hack, and then COVID. And so it's just these back-to-back things that really challenged my leadership. And all of those things together dramatically changed how I lead. But the precipice was this feedback and him ultimately
Mm.
leaving the company. And we tried to stay friends. We agreed to like a monthly call and a quarterly call, but it was just forced. There
Yeah.
was just no recovering from it. So I forgive him. I honor him. I'm really happy for him where he is in his life, and I'm also okay that relationship ended. It ran its course.
Well, as we know in business, nothing is forever. Change is constant, and that was an example that it was just time. But you know what? The way you described it as a gift is very rare. And one of the words you used, and I want to dive into your story, but this is so interesting because it does reflect everything that I know of you. You used the word pace.
Yeah.
Now, and I want to tie it because you talk about ownership as well, right? Ownership in the context of your employee-owned businesses, but you expand on the word ownership. But when a CEO is at the pace that you talk about, and pace is not a bad thing, but oftentimes your team can't keep up with you. Is this just a good thing or a bad thing, or is this something that has to be managed?
I think it's both, and I think it has to be managed. And it really depends on what you're trying to do. And I think I said in one of the videos I made with that post, I referenced Elon Musk is right, like, build things as fast as you break stuff as fast as you can, right? And
Right.
build it fast and break it fast. And I think that style works in certain types of companies, with certain types of technologies, with certain types of visionaries. For me, it didn't work because I am trying to build this ownership culture
Hmm.
and and truly do something unique from the experience people have when they come to work. And so I realized in this that one, my pace didn't feel fast because I'm just used to it.
Yeah.
But what I saw was that just because that's my pace, that's not everybody else's pace. And I can't have that expectation because
Hmm.
it's not realistic. And that is then setting me up for disappointment and my employees up for failure. And so once I realized that this is the lens that I view the world and that is not everybody else's view,
Yeah.
I could recognize that my pace was breaking things and not bringing people along in the way that I wanted to. So for me, I said, what is my priority? And because we're an employee owned company and we aren't driven by, we have to grow as fast as we possibly can. I believe, the luxury of saying,
Yeah.
I'm building this really great culture. And yes, we're going to grow. We've had great, steady growth year over year, only a couple years where we didn't grow, COVID, for example. But I don't have to break stuff because I'm
Hmm.
trying to do something different from a culture. So for me, I had to rein it in
Yeah.
because it wasn't giving me what I wanted. And so that's why I say it depends because a person like Elon Musk, right? That's how he's changing that's his
Yeah.
vision of how he changes the world. That is not mine. And so I had to really get clear on who I was and what I wanted and what kind of leader I wanted to be. And not only how I wanted people to experience me, but how I wanted people to experience themselves through
Hmm.
how I was leading the company. And so that's why I said, okay, I have to slow things down. And what I did, and people judge me about this, and I don't care anymore. I used to. As I started writing, I started my podcast, I started doing all my leadership stuff on social media because I needed some place to direct my
Hmm.
curiosity, my creativity, my drive. If I couldn't be setting this insane pace within my company because it was degrading the culture I was trying to keep to create, then I had to channel that somewhere else. So I channeled it into this whole other thing that I've built. So people think, oh, maybe your focus is split, and I say no. I am allowed to be able to
Yeah.
out there instead of my team taking the brunt of it. It
Yeah.
can it can be diffused in these other areas that are really important to me.
Brilliant. I want to dive more into the ownership culture, but I want to take a little bit of a step back. Can you walk us through the story of Kerry Siggins? Like, how'd you get to where you were? And I know there were some bumps in there that you've shared openly, but
Sure.
walk me through your story.
I think there's so much, right? How can you fit a
Yeah.
story in a place where it's not going to bore people to death? But I think there were three major pivot points, those inflection points in my life.
Hmm.
One was when I was about 15 years old. I was wild. I pushed boundaries. I got in trouble. And after my mom caught me doing some things I shouldn't be doing, she basically said, when you're 18, you are out of this house. I
Wow.
don't care what you do. You can go work at Walmart for the rest of your life, but you cannot live here. And I was
Mm.
shocked that she didn't think I was going to college. And she's like, you don't go to high school now. School was very easy for me. I was very, very bored. So I got great grades and I never went to class. She's like, you don't go to school now. What makes me think that you're going to go to college? And I realized that I was creating this persona of what I was thinking was like this boundary pusher, this kind of, wild child who could still have her, act together. But really, it was not effective. I was more viewed as a loser. And
Mhm.
so at that point, I decided that I was going to get my act together. I was going to go to Colorado School of Mines, which is one of the toughest engineering schools in the country, the best engineering school in the state of Colorado, and get a softball scholarship. And I made that happen.
Nice.
And that was really the first time that I saw that I could change my reality and change my identity.
Right.
And so that was a pivotal moment because then I went to Colorado School of Mines. I got the softball scholarship, and playing D2 softball was it saved me for myself at that age, but I didn't want to be an engineer. I chose
Mm.
it because of how people were going to view me. Oh, she's smart enough to get into Colorado School of Mines. See, she's not all these other things that her behavior has led
Got
us to
it.
believe about her. So when I graduated from Mines, I was lost because I stuck it out because of my softball team, but also because I didn't want to prove everybody right that I wasn't smart enough to graduate.
Hmm.
So when I got out of college, I was lost. And I met this really charismatic guy who happened to be a drug dealer. And in a matter of 6 months, my life had completely spiraled into substance abuse. And I abused substances for about 5 years of my life. I left Denver, moved to Austin, Texas, and it was really this up and down. But I lived this dual life. I was always ambitious, always driven, and so I was on this ladder, the corporate ladder. I was getting promotions and doing all these great things, but I had this like other side of my personality, this other side of my life that was really dark and toxic. And on Labor Day of 2006, it all came crashing down, and I accidentally overdosed, and that was the next big inflection point in my life. And it wasn't almost dying that made me change. It was the fact that I couldn't go to work for 3 days. Like I had this rule: party hard, play hard, work hard.
Show
It
up.
didn't matter. I always went to work, and I couldn't. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't get out of bed. And so I decided to call my mom, who lived in Durango, Colorado, just a couple hours from my hometown where I grew up. And I asked her if I could come back. And she said yes.
Nice.
And that was the next identity recreation. It was rock bottom. And I had to completely pivot. I had $100,000 worth of debt between student loans and credit cards and car payments, and completely living beyond my means. And I had no job. And I was determined not to go to rehab. My mom was basically going to be rehab for me. And I came here and I applied for a general manager position at StoneAge, even though I was grossly underqualified for it. I worked in manufacturing when I was in Austin, and so I had done a lot of the things, and the P&L that I had partial responsibility for was significantly bigger than what StoneAge was at the time. And so I was like, you know what? What do I have to lose? I'm going
Yeah,
to
good
apply
for
for
you.
this job. And the founders decided to take a huge risk and hire me. And that was almost 20 years ago. And here I am today, living this absolutely amazing life and going through this next kind of identity recreation that I'm in right now. I got divorced at the end of 2025, and have really been on this next phase of self exploration to understand, how what happened, and not
Yeah.
just from the idea of moving on, but from really truly understanding my patterns, and that operating system that's running that's holding me back. So that way I don't do that again in not just my next relationship or, I'm in a new relationship. I have an amazing man in my life. But that I can take that into my leadership as well.
I
So
love it. So 20 years ago, what did they see in you? Why did they hire you?
they saw drive, they saw ambition, they saw smarts. They knew I had grit. They had both. One was a mines graduate, the other one was a research assistant. They actually met at Colorado School of Mines, so they knew that you have to be pretty tough to make it through that school. So that I had grit, and I think the biggest thing was that the other candidates were what I would say traditional candidates. So, white men in their 50s who have lots of
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing experience.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought these guys are going to come in here and just change the company and they are not going to care for the culture. And they saw that they could mold me into this culture where
Love it.
employees came first and it wasn't always about making money and it was about creating great jobs and innovating and taking care of customers. And so I think that they saw me maybe less of a risk of dramatically changing the company. I have dramatically changed the company,
I bet.
and I did so even in that first year. But I think they wanted something that was different. But it was scary for them. John Wolgamott, who is the president of the company and who I reported to for those first few years, said it was like handing the keys of a Porsche over to a 16-year-old.
It's going to go well, but it probably won't. So that's
Yeah, exactly. Let's hope she can drive.
That's awesome. What a great story. So let's pivot back to, because I think it connects very well to this story. When you wrote the book, Ownership Mindset, I know you have a second book coming out. You define it as a leadership practice, and that usually those two things don't go together. Because
Yeah.
one's economic reality for the
Yeah.
team, and the other one is leadership, and they're never connected. Why did you connect those dots?
Because to me, they are interconnected. I just don't see how you can disconnect them. And because of what I learned through my overdose and through the rebuilding of my life was this idea of radical responsibility. I am
Mm,
responsible for everything that happens in my life. Things don't happen to me, they happen because of me, they happen for me, they happen through me. But I had to drop this victim mentality. And I didn't really fully understand this journey that I was on in those early
hmm
days. But as I began to really own it and see how becoming a strong self leader, what that did for my confidence, how that allowed me to raise my hand and take some risks, combined with the founders giving me autonomy and trust, which allowed me to grow and expand and try new things, and building a company where the the success of the company is shared by all employees. So it wasn't
hmm
just about the founders getting richer, or me somehow being an executive and building my wealth, but this shared responsibility, this shared measure of success, and this shared wealth creation. To me, it
hmm
just all embodied this idea of what owning it really looked like. So self leadership, autonomy, trust, and courage, and that you can do this in a capitalistic company where you are creating value for your customers and your employees. So it all came together like that for me. And I think if more businesses looked at it that way, we would have a lot happier companies, a lot happier workforce.
You know what's interesting is I've actually, although I think you're 100% right, the dots connect very nicely that way. They're never treated that way in the market, are they?
No,
Like
no,
you, employee ownership and
yes.
leadership is leadership, and it's different. Why do you think the rest of the world hasn't caught up to what you're doing at Stone Age?
Well, I certainly think some people have. I'm not the only one who shares this mentality, but overall, from a market perspective, no. I think we unfortunately worship the dollar at
Mhm.
all costs, and It is certainly here in the United States what is causing a big reason, not the only reason, right? There's it's such a complex issue, but this idea of wealth concentration and the rich
Hmm.
getting richer,
Hmm.
which AI is only going to exacerbate. I was just
Yeah.
listening to the All In podcast from last week this morning, and talking that we're going to have these first, that Anthropic is going to be like the biggest, most valuable company in the next 18 months, more
Wow.
than other companies, Apple and Amazon and all these companies have been around for decades. And it's a real challenge that we have. And it's because we value making money. We
Yeah.
value individualism, like as if people really truly think that they can, become billionaires. Well, the billionaire class doesn't want more billionaires,
That's
It's like
right.
it is not what the system is intended for. And so I think this is a huge issue. And I think more and more people are waking up to it and realizing that we have to change, right? You just said love. Love is the answer. I just got goosebumps. I'm hearing that more and more and more from
Wow.
people who are realizing that, God, we have all this money and I'm
Unhappy.
miserable.
Yeah.
Like this sucks, you know?
Yeah.
I and there has to be something more than this. And so I'm hoping that that shift happens, but until we realize that we are not our salary, we
Yeah.
are not our net worth, then it's going to just be this slow degradation of society because it's not real. It's not who we really are.
And I would add one more, and we are not our jobs.
No,
We are
no.
not our
And that's something
roles.
I've had to learn.
No, and
Huh?
it's there's a lovely thread between, from what you talked about when you were a young woman in sports and doing all the things, improving, improving, improving.
Yeah,
To what end at the end of the
exactly.
day, to what end,
Yeah.
right?
To
That's
not be
the
happy. I
to
was
not
stuck
be
in a marriage.
yeah,
Yeah, stuck in a
yeah,
marriage. I was exhausted. It was never good enough. There was always what's next, always what's next.
yeah,
I had no idea how to relax. I had
yeah.
no idea how to really find joy. I had no idea what intimacy even meant. I was
Mm,
moving so fast and so driven to
yeah.
achieve that I miss out on what makes life worth living and all just for building something. And I am so incredibly proud of what I built. And I have
Hmm.
no regrets. And I am not at all like, that was where I was in my evolution
Yeah.
as a human being, as a spiritual being. And we all have to go through that. This is journey, right? We're not born knowing all of these things. We
No.
have to learn. And so I'm incredibly grateful for every opportunity I've been given and all of the hard work I put into building my career and my success. And now I realize that that has nothing to do with who I am, and it
Yeah.
isn't going to be how I live this last half of my life. I'm 47 years old. I plan to live till 100. So I really truly am just in the middle of my life.
I love it.
And it is going to look very different going forward because I have woken up to the fact that those things, yes, they create a lot of great things and I'm proud of it, but it has not built the happiness, the joy, the contentment, and the alignment that I am seeking now in my life.
I love that. And when you think about, being human is not, there's no handbook to being human, right?
Yeah.
Because we're born with certain DNA, we're
Yeah.
born with certain social responsibilities and certain things that we grow up with, but there's no handbook. And so you've just kind of
Mm.
used an example of if you were to look at your life today and say, yeah, by all the check marks, I'm happy. But are you experiencing the things you want to experience at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Because what else, the thing I think about, because I'm a lot older than you, is when you look back, you sit there going, I am working towards what?
Yeah.
I am working towards good so I can slow down at 70 and now I can't walk. I
Yeah.
got sick. Like it's so dumb that we've set up this life to get to a peak when we're not peaking. We're peaking. You're peaking
Agreed.
now. You're
And
peaking now.
yeah, and it is this societal thing. And you know what? We can say, I don't subscribe to it.
Yeah.
And that is how we change things. We
Yeah.
only are governed by systems when we choose to stay
Yeah.
stuck in those systems, when we choose to agree to those systems. And I'm choosing something that is different. And I love what you said about experiences because I've done a lot of thinking about this.
Yeah.
That is what life is. It
That's what
is
life is.
one giant experience. And when you can step away and say, this is simply,
There we go. That was not
oh,
perfect.
yay, we're winning. There's balloons flying everywhere.
Uh,
When we are truly just looking at everything as this is an experience and it's my ego that is putting
yeah,
bad or good on it, this is simply an experience. And now, how do I start to create more of the experience that I want? How do I start embodying the person who I want to become now so that I can see more of those experiences? Life is changing, but we're so trapped into this is how it is. I have to play by these rules. I am stuck. My past decisions define who I am now. And that is simply not true. We can recreate ourselves into being anything we want to be in our mind.
that's so true.
And so that is what's really powerful. We don't have to buy into these systems that I work really hard until I'm 70 years old and then I get to enjoy the fruits of my labor. Like, no, I'm not
Yeah,
doing that. I'm going to enjoy it now and treat everything as just this beautiful experience, even the hard stuff, right? My divorce was so hard. It's
I bet.
one of the toughest decisions I've ever made. I wanted a divorce for a decade and I was too scared to do it.
Hmm.
And when I finally just started to say, this is simply an experience and whatever is going to happen next is going to happen next. But if I stay in this marriage and this unhappy, the experience that I want is not going
Not
to
gonna
come
happen.
forth. And so we are so scared because we don't know what comes next, that we don't bet on ourselves. We don't follow our hearts and we stay stuck in a system that is meant to keep us stuck and working really hard so that other people can be wealthy and then we get to somehow, live this great life when we're 70. No, it doesn't have to
No.
be that way.
Carrie, you just mentioned really prophetic words, what's next? We don't know what's next.
Never.
We don't often control what we control our behaviors when we have what's next, but we don't know what's next. Even
Yeah.
in a perfect marriage and a perfect life and check all the boxes,
Yeah.
shit happens, right?
Yeah.
And I want to tie that to your words of radical responsibility because I just love those. I love those two words. Tell me about how that radical responsibility started in your personal life and then kind of moved into your leadership philosophy. Tell me about that journey.
Yeah. So I had this interesting relationship with accountability and responsibility. In some aspects of my life, I had no problem owning it. In my first book, The Ownership Mindset, I tell a story of my mom making me go talk to an eighth grade teacher about me misbehaving in class. And I was so angry with her. And it changed my life because I had this amazing conversation where he heard me and I heard him, and it changed our relationship. And he wound up being one of my favorite teachers ever. And so in so many instances, I wasn't afraid to own it. But when I was looking at the decisions that I was making that was leading towards this boundary pushing, this idea that I constantly had to prove that I wasn't good enough. So I had to look a certain way and act a certain way and make a certain amount of money and drive a certain car. That was not rooted in true responsibility. It
Hmm.
was in this idea that I'm not good enough. People aren't going to see me a certain way and I have to prove it. And that really came from one, my personality, but two, my dad leaving when I was really young.
Mm.
And so even though I never came out and said I am this way because of my dad, in fact, I don't even know that I consciously thought that. Subconsciously, I absolutely did. Is that I am in this situation because of my dad. I went to Colorado School of Mines and didn't leave because my dad told me I shouldn't go to engineering school. I'm not smart enough to go to engineering school.
Wow.
So I had to prove it. And so there was this constant stress and constant proving and constant feeling like I wasn't enough. And this lack of relationship with my dad that was subconsciously driving all of my behavior.
Hmm.
And I wasn't owning that. So I had this dichotomy of going on of radical responsibility in some ways. And then this impulsive behavior that I didn't understand where it came from that was driven by this idea of this is my dad's fault. My dad didn't love me.
Got
And
it.
if he just would have loved me, I wouldn't be in this situation. So that is really where the radical responsibility had to come in for me is it's like you are actually, I'd like to go back because I shared this story. I had this realization and I shared this with my boyfriend Shane. I think it's really important when you are in the throes of substance abuse and you know that it's not serving you, but you also don't really want to quit. And drugs make you hate the life you love and love the life you hate, right?
Wow.
And so I knew that I was not making healthy decisions. I knew that I had a problem, but I also didn't really want to stop.
Mm,
And so I started looking at other people to justify my behavior. Okay, well, this friend has a bigger drug problem than me. And so, see, it's
wow.
not that bad. Or
Yeah.
this person, that person doesn't show up for work. I show up for work. So it's not that bad. And so I was allowing myself, I was letting myself off the hook basically
Hmm.
by comparing my problem to other people's and putting them down and saying, see, like my problem isn't that bad. And when I overdosed, there was no hiding it, right? There was like,
Yeah.
you have a serious problem and you are going to die. And it doesn't matter what all these other people are doing. What matters is what you are doing. And so my lack of ownership came from comparing myself and using people who were worse off than me as validation for why I was okay.
Wow.
I did not understand that at the time, but I do now. And that transformation was so powerful when it was like, it does not matter what anybody else is doing. What
Yeah.
matters is are the decisions I'm making. And why am I making these decisions? If I am impulsive and I do not understand where that impulsive behavior is coming from, I need to figure it out. And that is where it started. And now I've just
Brilliant.
taken that into my whole life, right? I am so interested in having this deep, profound relationship with myself for really understanding who I am so that I can let go of all of those things that are holding me back and show up and give my gift to the world so that the
Yeah.
world can be a better place. Not because I think I'm some amazing person. I just want to contribute. That's it.
Yeah.
And I didn't recognize that until I fully started to own it.
And what's interesting is, so we're both leaders and but we grew up in different places, have different experiences, and the handbook is the combination of all those experiences that we're able to share with people. And what I've learned, and that's why I love the way you put those two words together, I find taking responsibility easier than not.
I do too now. I totally agree. But I think it's because, we have to find this certain level of confidence in ourselves. I
Hmm.
look at my 13-year-old son, right? 13-year-old boys are drowning in identity. Who am I?
Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
son today didn't want to go to school. He got this cute haircut, like shave the sides and so it's like this kind of mullet looking thing that's all the rage. And it's really adorable. And his best friend made fun of him yesterday. And so
Oh,
he did
yeah.
not want to go to school today because he's like, everybody's gonna make fun of my haircut.
Yeah.
And so he is like drowning in this identity of who am I? And so he can't. And I said, basically I told him, tell your friends to F off is basically what I
Yeah.
said. He's like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And so you have to have this level of confidence to really be able to say, I am ready to take radical responsibility. Because if you don't have that belief in yourself that I'm okay, even if my hair looks bad, because I'm not my haircut, you're not going to. You're going to deflect. You're going to blame other people. You're going to find every way to protect yourself. So I think that it is having that true, deep self confidence that absolutely makes it easier to take radical responsibility. When people don't, it's usually because they are very insecure in who they are.
Now let's take that to your company and tie it to the book you wrote and the culture that you've built. Do you see radical responsibility to all your leaders and all the people in your company, or is there still some challenges to overcome?
Oh, there's always challenges. I mean, look, people don't know how to think and act like owners. We have to teach them.
Mm,
And in fact, it is not rewarded in most places. Most places
yeah,
are sit down, shut up, do your job. I'm not
yeah,
interested in your feedback. I'm not
yeah,
interested in your ideas. And so it's trained out of them. And don't say little kids, right? If you don't have something nice to say, don't say it. Instead of teaching kids how to speak their truth, but do it in a way that lands, that can move things forward, right? We are literally trained to not own it.
yeah.
And so we have to give people grace to be able to come into this culture and understand what owning it means. And so we offer all kinds of support through training. We have a corporate coach who we work with the Enneagram, who helps people understand themselves better and their triggers and They look like under stress so that they can
Hmm.
show up as the best version of themselves and understand their coworkers. So no, it's not 100%. But I will say this: if you can't own it, you for sure can't be on my executive team.
Yeah.
And I've had this, right? Even executives can come in and they love this idea, and then when all of a sudden it's like, all right, you're going to get some feedback, and you have to go out and face the team or talk to the team, or I don't actually care what your idea is. Go find out from your team everybody what they think first, and then we'll formulate a decision. Right? That is very different than how a lot of executives work. So we have to train people and teach people and give them the grace to decide if this is a kind of culture that they want to be a part of or not. And not everybody does. Not everybody likes it. Not everybody's comfortable with it.
I love the way you've made the distinction between the systems because all of our world is systematized to keep us down, right? At the end of the day,
Yes.
with the exception of the American dream that says you can do anything. It's not as easy as that. So when you think about that, and we'll use the word culture, which is as an umbrella term, what do you think most leaders get wrong when it comes to culture?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I think two things. One is that culture applies to everybody but them.
Oh, yeah, big.
And
Yeah.
so often you see people talking about what their culture is, and then you see leaders, you see CEOs who do not live their values and do not
Hmm.
walk the walk, that do not say, I am uh, not only responsible for this culture, but I am a part of this culture.
Yeah,
And so that is, I think that that's number one where people get it wrong is this applies to everybody else, not me.
love
And
that.
then the second thing that I think that leaders get wrong is that they don't talk to everybody and help them see that the culture is a collective.
Hmm.
Yes, executives are responsible for maintaining, right, for setting the tone. But every single person in the company either contributes to the culture or takes away from it.
Yeah,
And I don't think leaders talk to people enough about that. And a culture is not just what is happening with leadership and it is not just what the feeling is around the company. It's how everybody is choosing to show up in the
yeah,
culture themselves. Because as you said earlier, right, we're only responsible for us and our behaviors. And so you're creating your reality. And so if you are, as an individual, diving into the negative aspects of a culture, of course, that's what you're going to see. Of course, that's what you're going to get more of. And I don't think leaders help employees see enough how they, as individuals, are either adding to or taking away from the culture. And so they're
love it.
not talking about it in that. And I say to my team every day, I am responsible for all of this and for making sure that people are living our values and that our values are clear and that I'm embodying them. But you also are responsible for that
Bingo.
too, because the culture is made up of every single one of us. It is a collective. It is not me. It is not the executive team.
What you've done, it comes back to that radical responsibility piece again, right? That is just almost a theme in everything that you do, that everybody ultimately has to get to that place. And that creates alignment, clarity, all the things that you need. Very, very powerful. The two last things before we wrap up today. I think I could talk to you for hours and hours, but we only have so much time. Talk to me about your YPO experience, and then we'll dive into your next book and what that's about.
Yes. So I've been in YPO for I think 9 years, 8 years. Yeah, I think it was 2018 maybe. So yeah, 8 years, 8 or 9 years. And I have had an amazing YPO experience and has been very up and down.
Hmm.
So I joined. It was great. I live in Durango, which is in Southwest Colorado. It is away from any major metropolitan. So I have to travel to be part of YPO.
Hmm.
And at first, it was amazing because I would go up to Denver. I would fly up every month for my forum. And then after COVID, I decided that that wasn't for me. I don't want to travel like that anymore. And so I left my chapter and joined a regional chapter where there wasn't attendance requirements.
Hmm.
And that was not a great experience for me. It was definitely not the right fit for a multitude of reasons. And so I left that chapter and went to a newly formed integrated chapter with some of my dearest YPO friends that left YPO Colorado when they golded out. And so I love that chapter now, but I would say that the best part of my YPO experience has been through networks, not through my chapter.
Hmm.
So I joined the Doing Business Globally Exco as a learning officer. I did it for 3 years through COVID, and then became chair, and then I became the vice chair for the business networks. I didn't go on to the chair role because I was going through a divorce, and I just couldn't
Hmm.
take on that kind of
Too
travel
much. Yeah.
commitment. And I love networks. I love, 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 love networks. It has been the best part of YPO for me. In fact, the only forum I'm in is in a women's business network forum with four other women. There's five of us, and oh my God, it is the most profound
So awesome.
forum experience I could ever imagine having. But now I am chapter chair, incoming chapter chair of YPO Pikes Peak, mostly
Nice.
because we had some shifts in the ladder, and you have to now have a Y as chapter chair. I'm the only one who has any kind of YPO leadership experience that could come in and do it. So I didn't go through the ladder, and I'm coming in as chair, and I'm really excited to engage with my chapter in that way because most of my experience has been through networks, and so I'm really looking forward to this next phase of YPO, and getting more involved from a chapter experience side of things. So
That's amazing. Yeah, we could talk about YPO forever, but I want to now to kind of finish up on your
yeah,
new book. So you
yes,
wrote a new book. It's coming out. Tell us about what that's about, why you wrote it, and when's it
yeah.
coming out?
So my new book is called Talk with Trust, and it launches on August 4th of this year. And I wrote this book because I do a lot of keynote speaking. And I share the story of my executive giving me this feedback, and I share some other stories of me giving feedback because feedback is a huge part of the ownership
Hmm.
mindset.
Hmm.
Radical responsibility, honest communication, saying what needs to be said, and so I would get so many people asking me about how you give feedback. I have to give my boss feedback, or I
Mm.
have to like terminate this employee, and I just don't know how to do it. And so I thought, and I have this framework that I use in my head. I never formalized it, but I thought, this would be a great second book because
Mm.
I literally am asked this question all the time. How do you give feedback in a way that builds trust, that lands with the person, that makes the relationship better instead of damaging it? And so Kate created my shares model, which is just a little checklist that you can run through before you give feedback and during what you do during feedback and then after, to just help people be able to to speak their truth, to say what needs to be said, but to approach it with curiosity and recognize that they are looking at it through their lens and that
Hmm.
there's always another side. And so staying in dialogue is really how you build trust and build these great relationships, even when you have to deliver tough feedback. So that's what the book is called. I'm
Awesome.
so excited about it. I think that it's going to be a platform for having hard conversations. I have big plans to build out a whole platform around the book. And it's
Nice.
also going to be the stepping stone for book number 3, which is going to be about self actualization and this whole idea of why we as leaders, as humans, we need to understand our wounds and heal from them so that we don't lead from our wounds and
Love it.
create more trauma for ourselves and in the workplace, and really help people become the very best version of themselves. So it's going to be great. I'm so excited about it. And I really hope that it gives people the tools that they need to have those really tough conversations.
I love it. And you know the trust word, we haven't really talked about it much today, but it works on both sides of that fence. When you have
Yes, it does.
trust, those conversations are easier. When you don't
Yes.
have trust, it's hard to build trust with those conversations, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. But it's always an opportunity. Even when there's not trust, you still have to have the conversation. And if you go into it with the mindset of this is going to improve this relationship, right? That's the first part is of the S. It's to specify your outcome.
Love it.
Specify your outcome. Like what do you want to get out of this conversation? And if it is not to improve this relationship, even if you have to give constructive feedback or even if you have to terminate somebody,
Hmm.
then you're not in the right mind space to do it in a way that builds trust. So I really hope that this model helps people understand that trust, there's always a starting point, and it can be in those tough conversations if you handle it well. But one
Love it.
thing I'd like to add to this, because I think this is really important, is that because it goes back to this idea of radical responsibility, You are only responsible for your side of the feedback. And that's you do have a responsibility to deliver it as well as you possibly can, but you have no control over how the other person's going to receive it.
It's true.
I have had people deliver feedback to me in a terrible way, but because I like my executive, but because I choose to see the my role in the situation and that I can own something in that feedback, it didn't matter how it was
True.
delivered. I grew from that feedback.
Yeah.
And so you have to let go of the outcome. No, that's not the right word. You have to let go of the other person's reaction or response because you're
Mm.
not responsible for that. All you can do is show up and have an authentic conversation and stay in dialogue and deliver it as well as you possibly can. And then you have to give the other person space to go through their process too. And that's
Love
where
it.
people get hung up because they feel like they're responsible for that person's reaction, and you're not.
That's a hard one to do as a human, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's always action reaction in life, and
Yeah.
responsibility is my response to whatever. And it's just that's probably the hardest thing to do because even in personal relationships, I spoke, I said something, you cried, I feel responsible for your tear. Like that's the balance that's so hard to do, isn't it?
It is, but here's the thing. And this is the work that I've been doing because I have a tendency for over responsibility. I have felt for most of my life I am responsible for making everybody feel good, for making everybody feel comfortable,
Mm,
and it's why I didn't get divorced, right? I'm responsible for my ex-husband and his
yeah,
well-being and therefore I can't do it.
yeah,
We are not. We are not responsible for other people. We are responsible for ourselves. And that means that you own how you say things. Right? That's why the delivery is so important to be able to say, I care enough about our relationship to
yeah,
have this conversation with you. And it's not easy for both of us, but I'm still going to do it.
yeah,
And we are so worried about other people's reaction and responses and feel that responsibility that we don't actually say what needs to be said. And we are not. I can tell you something and I have zero control over how you are going to take it. That is up to you. But that doesn't mean that you don't deserve to hear my perspective, my
yeah.
experience. Doesn't make it the truth. It just makes it an experience. And let's talk about it so that we can improve this relationship.
Love it.
And when you recognize you are not responsible for the other person, you are responsible for yourself, and you show up and you do it to the very best of your ability, that is the best you can do. And you have to let the other person go through what they're going to go through. And if they have a negative response, it doesn't have to mean it was a bad thing. Great things can come from
Yeah,
negative things. Look at my situation,
yeah.
right? In that moment, it was horrible. I went home and thought, I got to not be a CEO anymore. I suck at this job. And it transformed my leadership because I chose to turn it into something positive. So even if a person reacts negatively, don't just take that initial reaction of like, oh, I ruined this relationship and I never should have done it. I shouldn't have had this conversation. Let it unfold because you have no idea what kind of gift is going to be given to you because you said what needed to be said and you allowed that person to have the space to have the reaction and the response that they had in that moment and come out of it the other side a different human being.
We're going to end on that note because what a gift you've just given us. You've helped me as well define the word responsibility because I tend to be the former, that it's all my responsibility. Everybody in my circle is my responsibility, and that's sometimes a lot of weight that I've got to learn that you know what, that's not your weight. And thank you for that gift, Carrie.
You're welcome. And it's a gift to yourself because I'm a true believer when you do what's best for you, it's best for everybody around you.
Good
When
for you.
when you have this shared thing that we have of over responsibility, you aren't true to yourself. And I'm sure you can look at all of these different instances because you felt responsible for somebody,
Yeah.
you weren't true to yourself. And that is not what we are here to do. We are here to be true to ourselves, understanding that every action that we have absolutely impacts other people, but we are responsible for ourselves and for how we show up and being true to yourself. And when you're true to yourself, you're happier and you create more amazing goodness in the world. And we just have to figure out how to make that mental switch. And I hear you, it is not easy to do.
I want to finish on the words that you said, make amazing goodness on this planet. And Carrie, you are, through your journey and through your stories and through your passion, are sharing that. And I didn't know all the parts of the story, but boy, this was beautiful and illustrative, and as you say, a gift to everybody listening. So, Carrie, thanks so much for
Thank
spending time with
you.
us. It's really
Thanks for having
appreciated.
me. Yeah.